My name is Kaspar, and I made a website to share electronics projects called Kitnic, and you can visit it at Kitnic.it. And these slides are available at the address printed there as well for future use. So the problem that the site is trying to address is, as many of you will probably know, there are loads of people are sharing electronics projects online. I did a little bit of a survey and I found about 3,000 KiCad projects on GitHub, as well as 7,000 Eagle projects on OSHCamp, which has a little site where you can download designs and order them from OSHCamp, or download the Gerbers as well. There's about 9,000 shared projects so far. And that's not counting all the other ways people share projects. There's an image missing there. The image there is supposed to be of a Robert Pease project where there's just a load of wires everywhere. So the problem is that when people share projects online, it's often really hard. They can be amazing and complicated, but if you try and replicate the work, it's often quite hard to find the right parts, to find the parts you actually need to replicate the project. So what I'm proposing is we have all these different ways of sharing and making projects, and what I wanted to do was make something that would kind of filter all of that. I'm not quite sure why I picked this metaphor, because I'm a vegetarian, but I'd like to process all of this, and what you really want is you want the board and you want the parts. And you want the parts to make up that board. So kind of the starts of trying to solve this the first part I made was a browser extension that could drive the retailer sites, and then the second part is the website that I'm here to talk about. So the extension, it tries to replicate the web requests that you send when you actually use the sites and add things to your shopping cart. And it works for these 5 retailers listed there: DigiKey, Mauser, RS, and New York and Farnell. Now the reason it needs to be a browser extension rather than just a website is because there's something called the same origin policy, which is a security feature of your browser that another website can't just change your session on a different website. So that's the reason it's an extension. That's is a useful kind of security feature. Now, when you actually look at what your browser sends to add something to a shopping cart, this is what I'd have to type at the command line to add something to the Mauser cart, and I'm probably not going to do that. Plus, this goes for about 4,000 characters at the bottom there, for a kind of session storage bit. So I didn't really think it was going to be possible to do this, and I thought, well, I'll give it a go. I don't think it's going to work, and the sites will probably change and it won't work anymore. But the approach I took was to to start out with testing and have automated tests set up, so that if the site changes or if something else changes, I can make sure it works across all these different countries and different retailers, and I can run these tests and keep on top of it. And that turns out, it worked quite well. They don't change the sites that often, and the extension has been working for quite a few years now, and works quite well due to this approach, I think. So this is what it looks like. Really, what it is a link from your spreadsheet to your retailer shopping cart, and you can kind of copy and paste from the spreadsheet and back, and you can fill your shopping carts or empty your shopping carts with it there. So it's available for Chrome and Firefox. It takes in tab separate values. So when you copy and paste from a spreadsheet, that's the storage format of the clipboard is actually tab separate values. And it's a simple format to pass, and you don't have to worry about escaping, because nobody will be putting tabs into their data, hopefully. I haven't found any yet. So you're able to add and remove from the cart. I added a feature fairly recently where it actually searches Octopart and find chips to try and guess the part that you want if you haven't described it fully. It works okay. It's always worth double checking what parts it's selected for you. It's open source on GitHub. It's under a CPL license, and it's got about 250 users. And I'm not sure, like on the extension on its own, I'm not quite sure what kind of work really, what they use it for mainly. I haven't been able to quite ascertain that, because this extension was out before I made the website. So it'd be interesting to see what people really use it for. So back to this awkward metaphor. We've got a way to transfer the knowledge of what the parts you bought to someone else, but what's kind of missing is a sort of unified interface to both the board files and the purchasing, and that's what the website Kitnic.it is supposed to provide. And it's very, very early days yet. I've kind of released it before it's really ready. What I decided on was the backend will be Git repositories. So you put your work into a Git repository, and then you tell me the URL of your Git repository, and that way then it gets added. It's a front end to that Git repository, really. So we use tab separated values because that's what the extension works with, and we use there's a standard place to put these tab separated values as a one-click bill of materials.tsv. At minimum, you need references in quantity and the manufacturer part numbers. So that's the minimum required if someone else wants to find out what parts to buy. And I decided to standardize on RS-274X Gerbers and Exelon drills, because that's what everyone uses to order their boards at the moment. There's newer and possibly better formats out there, but none of the fabs are really using them yet. So the website itself it's all JavaScript, for better or worse, because I started off writing the extension. I needed to use JavaScript. I need JavaScript for the web front end. So unless there's a really compelling reason not to use JavaScript, I decided I'll use JavaScript for everything. I use a framework called React, which is an open source kind of view framework. Use the extension. So the way the site is set up, I make use of GitHub Pages and Travis CI. So GitHub Pages is a way to host a static website on GitHub itself, on the GitHub infrastructure, and that's free. So I kind of abuse the free continuous integration services and kind of hook it all together to rebuild the entire site anytime anyone adds a project. So if someone wants to add their project, they edit the file on GitHub and append the URL, and that triggers off the continuous integration service to rebuild the entire site. So obviously, that's not going to scale, but it works for now for the number of projects that are on there. And yeah. I found a really neat JavaScript written in JavaScript Gerber renderer called PCB Stackup, which makes really good, accurate, and nice renders of the Gerber files. So that's an example there. So I'm going to try and do a little bit of a live demo. But since that image, I'm not too hopeful since that image didn't load. Oh. I might try and unplug this and see if that helps. Yeah. I loaded this up before, so this is what the site currently looks like. I guess I won't be able to click on a project because I don't have internet.
I'll just try it again.
Yeah. The cable may have come off.
So try reloading the page.
I've just unplugged the cable.
Yeah, yeah.
Should I replug it? I'll just, I'll just talk about it a bit. There's actually a search interface at the top here. So if I search for the Uno, that should still work, but it's not loading. It's not loading things, right? Shouldn't have done it live. Ah. I don't see any lights come on there, unfortunately. But if we... I don't think that's true. Sorry? What? 10 minutes ago? Really? Jeez.
Okay, so we're going ahead, right? Advanced, maybe?
Really? 10 minutes ago?
Proceed.
Jeez. That should be that's automated. That shouldn't have happened. My server must have gone down or something. So this is a project on there. This is an odd sound synthesizer, I believe. So these are the buttons to buy the parts. And they'll be gray if the parts haven't been specified. You can look at the bottom. You can see what parts have been specified and haven't. So these are the red means that only some of the parts have been specified. Just going to try and I did have this set up on my own laptop on a dev server, which I would have preferred to use, but there was no link from this out here to. Anyway, sorry about this. I'm just going to scroll to another project. Well, let's go to the Uno, because that's like the running one. Yeah. So that's got all the parts, and we can actually, let's try this. I'm going to click on this. It's going to bring me to this, and add all the parts with references added as line notes, which is really handy when you get the parts, so you know what's what. I'm going to go back to my presentation. So there's supposed to be an image there, but that's also not loaded. So I think the real power of this is that you can make a kit without having to bag the components, and you do your design, you put it up and people can make it, and that's really the power of this, I think. So it's sort of virtual kit. So there's lots of, it's really early days, and there's loads of things that could be added to this. It's sort of minimal at this point. We don't really have user accounts yet, so really it would be a good idea if you log in and these are your projects and you can add and remove them yourself. We could probably move away from using Git necessarily if people don't want to, because there are a lot of hardware engineers out there, I believe, that don't want to or can't and don't want to use Git. There should be an interface to versioning, so you can tag versions and have different versions of the same project. We could connect more directly to PCB batching services, so you don't need to just download the files necessarily, but you could just click on it and order it. I had an idea for an assembly aid that could go on the site, which I've mocked up, but also there's no picture for it. But if you imagine the bill of materials and the board there, you could hover over it and it could show you exactly where to put the part if you're soldering it yourself. We could possibly connect it up to assembly services. There's quite some quite modern assembly services that are trying to make it easier for people to have their projects assembled, and they've shown some interest in hooking this up to that. The making of bill of materials is still quite tedious, so we can definitely improve the tools to make bills of materials and make that easier. I tried a little bit with that completion feature in the extension, but it doesn't work that well yet. But there's other ways of going about that. And another idea would be to have live pricing data on the site, and so you can see exactly where would be the cheapest to order this. If you'd like to get involved, add your project, because I'm running a little bit of a promotion at the moment. I've got some vouchers from Dangerous Prototypes, so if you add your project, I'll give you a $25 voucher for making the PCBs. I've got 15 out of 20 left for that. If you would like to do web development, if you're able to develop web development or would like to learn, all of this is open source. Send me a message. There's a whole slew of features that are interesting, and I'm sure you can think of up your own as well. So that's a really good way to get involved. Otherwise, spread the word and tell people about it, because really, I'd like to get a bit of, I'd like to get critical mass on this so that it becomes a central place for people to share electronics, and making that sort of the well, not necessarily the default, but a conventional means to share electronics projects. That's my contact info there, and that's the Twitter handle. We're on other social media as well. I think that's the end of the talk.